All right, I am extremely excited because I feel like I'm sitting on the other side of the of the screen of this conversation that we normally have because I am a client of yours. I have been for most of this year, which as you know has been a long time coming. I've been wanting to work with you for ages and then finally the stars aligned, no pun intended. And and I got to work with you. So we're working together for 12 months and you better get used to me because I'll probably be sticking around for a very long time. So I'm excited to be the one asking you the questions today and finding out the answers from you because you are such an incredible source of support for me. And I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm sure you can tell. I I don't find people who can support me very easily. I call me a special case, call me hard work, call me whatever you like, big energy, whatever. I find it really difficult to find people who can really hold space for me and support me. And that might very well have to do with my astrological makeup, as well as my personality, as well as maybe my struggles to receive very easily, like so many women. Um, and so, like, where I really want to start with you in this chat is just with around the theme of change, because I feel like this year, especially, has just been such a significant year of change for so many people. And I feel like, myself included, a lot of us have been maybe blindsided or just kind of knocked off our feet, like with certain things happening and changing, not necessarily the course of our lives, but maybe like the way we see our path or the way that we need to refocus. And I would just, yeah, I'd love to start if you're comfortable just with what the changes you've navigated this year and how you've managed to really love and honor and care for yourself through those changes. Because I feel like from the conversations I've been having with women who've joined my experiences this year, a lot of them feel like they've been getting their lives wrong, like they're being punished somehow for this change, and they've been stuffing things up and they've gone off course or off kilter, or yeah, they've done something wrong or they're broken or whatever. Um, and I would really love for us, especially as women, to rewrite that narrative. And I'm hoping that there's a little nugget of gold in this conversation for any woman who's been feeling like she's been getting it wrong despite, trying her best through all these changes. And yeah, just how you would speak to that.
Mm. Firstly, I feel absolutely so grateful that we have the opportunity to connect and also that I can support you as well. And I think that I resonate so much with what you were saying about your own personal experience because I'm a Virgo sun too. I get it. Like we are special cases. But I think too, there's like a level of discernment of what type of support that we need. And I think too, like when you understand that, it makes it so much easier to, yeah, to be able to hold space for someone. But like, I just want to highlight before I dive into the detail around everything is that I want everybody that's tuning in to understand that that's not your fault. You haven't done anything wrong, that the universe isn't punishing you. We're all going through monumental change. And if I think of astrology and how I use it as a tool for empowerment and how it supports me in my own life, is that nothing is ever static. Everything is always in motion. Now, if this change had come at any other time in history, I think it would have felt way more tolerable. But because of where we've been, especially of what we've navigated astrologically and globally and culturally over the last few years, it's felt like a lot. And I had a client say to me yesterday, she said, I'm just so tired, Kristy. Make it stop. And I think that's how everyone feels, right? Like people tell me all the time, oh my goodness, I love change. But when we are forced to up level and evolve and change continually, when it's relentless, it feels very tiresome and we just don't feel prepared for that change. And so as soon as that starts to escalate, our foundation feels really wobbly. And of course, as soon as our foundation feels wobbly, we're going to outsource our intuition, outsource our power, outsource our agency sometimes because we're looking towards others for a solution. And right now, this year, we're navigating some planetary alignments that there's three that I'm thinking of that haven't happened since the 1700s. Like, this is huge for us on a global level. But because the change is not only imminent, it's also going to take time. Is that we have to really warm up to the fact that we're being forced to look at life differently and ourselves within that. And so 2025 was the year I coined the personal revolution. But in that process, right, we're going through such an internal transformation because our needs are changing, our desires are changing, like how we respond to the world is changing. And that's such a solo act. But as humans, we're relational. We have to do everything through connection. And so, what that's meant is relationships have faltered, they've changed. So, we don't have the same support systems in place. And if I think of like any thing in the psychology realm that speaks to self-actualization, we actually can't do that without community and connection around us. Does this make sense?
Yeah, total sense, total sense. And that's why I wanted to start here because this is such a personal yet universal topic. And I think especially for women, and obviously, my community is mostly made up of women. And yeah, I just think we're so incredibly hard on ourselves that I think it really helps when somebody else admits out loud, I've been having a really tough time. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I feel like I'm not getting this right. I feel like I get over one hurdle and then there's another one that appears. And yeah, and I think it's just really important that we do speak this stuff out loud, individually and, as a broader collective view, because it can feel really lonely when you're like with your own thoughts 24/7 and you're a overthinker or you're a deep feeler or just alive at this point in time. It's like it's a lot. It's a lot. And so yeah, I was just wondering, like, obviously that's the sort of collective viewpoint, but for you personally, what has this year looked like? What have you had to traverse and navigate? And how have you really sort of taken care of yourself through it all? And either reprioritized, refocused, realigned in a way that you're like, okay, that shit had to go, that had to change, and
Yeah.
now I'm like, I'm where I need. You're always where you need to be, but like this feels better. This feels more aligned with right now. This feels, yeah, good.
Yeah. So for me, if I think of how I'm navigating my current astrology right now, amidst the melting pot of everything we're collectively going through, I feel more prepared than ever before. And I have dealt with monumental change this year, but it's because of how I prepared for it. So I knew what was coming in this year. And so I spent last year navigating a once in a lifetime transit with the planet Neptune, which represents dreams and illusion, also disillusion. And it was the hardest transit to navigate, but I knew what I needed to do. So I felt really entrenched in uncertainty last year. And so I read my life away. I read 70 books. I dived into the esoteric practices that have been spoken about throughout history. I read all of these amazing manifestation books from the early 1900s, right? It was in my way of reclaiming my power amidst that change that I knew was coming. Right. So the changes that I've navigated this year, which are huge, like, and I don't want to say that I didn't falter at times, but one of the things that I had to really grapple with, which was a decision that I've really been navigating the last couple of years, is that I decided to get my breast implants out because they were essentially making me sick. I'd had a breast reduction and a lift when I was 29, and I had a small implant put in for the shape. That was purely what it was for because I was competing in bodybuilding the following year. And I had been wavering on that decision, but I'd also had so many health challenges. I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. But the reason I had hesitated is because my surgeon had said to me, Kristy, if you're going to have children, you need to make a decision first and go down that path before doing this. And it was just purely from a cosmetic standpoint. And that felt so tough because I felt like my business was just taking off. I felt so comfortable in who I was. I was reclaiming my health, and I was just like, is this it? Like, is this like turning point moment? And I know anything can happen at any time, but I had to really find resolve within that of that might not be a part of my journey. And it was something I was never 100% on anyway. But I didn't want that experience to be forced, like to be taken away from me. So there was a lot of emotional turmoil. It wasn't just getting my implants removed. It was also, you know, figuring out if like becoming a parent was going to be a part of my path, and not trying to fixate too much on what my future horoscope was also trying to tell me as well, because I think we get sliding doors moments every single day. I think what really kept me feeling like so sure of what I was doing and what I was building is because my work and what I do as an astrologer, like amidst all of this like global change, I haven't felt really affected by it, purely because I think people are seeking out understanding within themselves. And so I'm say that work is a bit of a coping mechanism. It absolutely is. And it's really the only thing that did get me through. But of course, throughout this change, taking some time off, coming back to work, I think what I've been able to do now is approach everything in life with a fresh set of eyes. My vitality is coming back, the way I'm operating my business is changing. And there's something I've been sitting with a lot over the last couple of weeks as I've been forecasting the next couple of years. I've spoken about self-trust so much over the last couple of years. It's the pillar, I believe, of like you can't step into your higher self without self-trust, and that is amplified through your connection with your intuition and also the decisions that you're making, and using things like astrology more as a mirror rather than a predictive tool. But we've been, because of where the astrology's been, and this is what I'm personally leaning into amidst this change, which is why I'm sharing it with everyone, as we've been so conditioned to trust the universe, right? Like I've even said this time and time again, like when we are faced with adversity, when we go through this monumental change, it's like, it's okay. I know this is good for me. I'm trusting the universe. And then we look for signs within that. And I'm really shifting that narrative to like, I don't want to trust the universe anymore. I want to trust myself. How do I trust myself within all of that? So I continue to use these beautiful things that we really have presented to us every single day without outsourcing my power. Does that align with what you've been experiencing?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think, there is a beauty in trusting the universe because, there's that overarching theme of hope. There's hope, there's faith, there's belief, there's trust. But I'm with you in that I feel like, yeah, there's been just such a huge shift maybe over the last decade or so of us like trusting the universe is in a way outsourcing our power. And also like, I don't like to be so absolute where it's like, it's either this or that. It's like, no, it can be both, and I think that's definitely one of Gabby Bernstein's teachings I've really taken to heart. It gets to be this and I think that we can trust the universe and trust in a higher power, however you describe it. And also, we can put a lot more trust in ourselves because I think that's probably where the scales have shifted a little bit to maybe out of kilter for sure.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, I think I've seen that, like, or we've seen that in the social media space. We've now got the rise of AI, so we're now becoming more skeptical of what do we trust, what's real and what's not. Everyone is using their online presence as some form of online resume, right? Everyone is a guru, a teacher, a mentor in some description, in some way, shape, or form, I should say. And I think what's happened is within that, right, as we're looking toward to others to help us to find our way forward. And that's not a bad thing. I do that myself included. I think we have to have a level discernment about that though. But in that process, I think a lot of people have gotten lost. There's a lot of consumption happening. And they're actually like the conversation I have almost every day with people is like, I ask them, do you trust, like, what's your relationship like with your intuition and do you trust it? And 90% of the time, somebody will say, I don't know. I don't trust it all the time. I know when I do, it's always right, but I also don't know how to connect with it. And I just think that's just such a powerful conversation is how can we use this conversation we have been having around manifestation and spirituality and using these amazing esoteric tools that have, become a part of pop culture again, but use them in a way more as a reflection in a mirror rather than something that is actually meant to harness or know more about ourselves than we do.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you were talking about reading, like, those earlier texts on manifestation, those earlier books, I recently read for the very first time The Game of Life and how to
Oh, amazing. Oh, I love that book. So good.
And I was messaging with a girlfriend. I'm like, I think this is the single best spirituality manifestation book I have ever read in my life. And I have read so many, over the last 20 odd years. And it's just because of its simplicity. Like there was no fluffy buzz terms or like you've got to do this 16-step process. It's like she just cut through all of the crap and just went straight to the heart of it. And a lot of it was around trust.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so interesting. Like, when I read that book, which was one of the books I read last year, and there was such an array of others because I just was so entrenched to understand, right? Like, why has there been times in my life where I've manifested really easily and other times where it literally felt like years in the process? And yeah, you're right. It comes down to trust as one of those key pieces of the puzzle. Another one I found that's really interesting is hope. And I talk about this a lot with clients, like, and I think that's why people come to me too, right? They want to know that there's hope on the horizon, so the change is incoming. And I think if we don't have hope, we feel defeated and we're more likely to slip into a fixed mindset rather than a growth mindset. So hope helps us to really cultivate that. And the other one that I've been sitting with more recently, and I'm trying to figure out how this is fitting into the astrology of where we're going, because this is definitely a theme moving into next year. But I don't really like the word, and you might be able to help me with this, Sonia, is authenticity. Like if we aren't living in congruence with our soul, right? We can say we might want the Louis Vuitton handbag or we want the, the house on a particular place on the water, right? Or whatever it is. But that if that's not in congruence with who we are on a soul level, there's going to be some form of disconnect. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's my food for thought.
I love that. And also, I really feel like we need to reclaim some of those words because some of those words have been absolutely butchered. And you know me, I'm a word nerd. I really believe in the power of language and how we speak, not only to others, but how we speak to ourselves and what we are speaking into existence, in our lives. And I think authenticity is such a beautiful word. Like to be authentic is one of the most beautiful compliments I think you could ever receive. And I
Mm,
just think that word has been commoditized and commercialized, particularly online. And I think maybe, maybe 2026 is the year we reclaim it because there's absolutely nothing wrong with authenticity in its purest sense, in the true form of the word. And I love that. I love, authenticity, trust, and hope. Like, what a beautiful trio,
yeah. I
you
think
know?
it's like it doesn't have to be 7, 16 steps. Like, I think it's just some core fundamentals. And oh, that's the beautiful lessons we're getting right now as Neptune and Saturn are in Pisces, is that sure, it does speak to escapism and really figuring out what our daily commitments and rituals need to be and how do we bring those to fruition so we keep the promises we're making to ourselves. But it's also this like kind of call to remember like the power within us as well. And yeah, it's something that I still am sitting with and thinking about. And it will be interesting to see where this conversation goes over the next few years as astrology continues to cultivate the changes that are required and some bigger planetary shifts that are going to take place are going to radically transform some conversations as well. So I'm excited for that because I feel like we need some receipts in the personal development
Oh my
space.
gosh, absolutely. And so I'm really curious though, then you said you were looking back at times in your life where you were able to manifest what you truly wanted, quite quickly. And then there were other times where you were like, why is this not happening? Like, what am I doing? How am I blocking this? And I think that's probably, I know I've thought that a lot is like, what is wrong with me that I can manifest? Like, I can manifest love in my life like nobody else. Like, I have my beautiful husband. I've been with him for 21 years. Like I love him so much and he's like my best friend. And I've got these incredible friends in my life who are family to me and just absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous people that I know. My chips have been down this year. Like I have, hit rock bottoms that I never thought I would hit, especially at this time of my life. And I have been shown nothing but love and support throughout this whole entire time. And yet, there are other like areas in my life that are just absolute sticking points that I feel like I can't get right. And, is it a case that when you've examined your own life and you've looked at the times where you've been able to manifest so quickly and easily, and then other times where it's been really sticky and hard, do you think it is a case of you you only receive what you believe you're worthy of receiving.
Yeah, great
I've been
question.
sitting, yeah, I've been sitting with that concept a lot because it's like, okay, well, if I think I'm worthy of that and that seems to come into my life in abundance, like
Mm,
without even really trying, because I'm not thinking about it, because I'm just like, of course I deserve a lovely
mm,
friend. Of course I deserve a loving husband. Um, and then when it comes to something else and I'm really struggling, like with money or career or whatever it is, and things aren't quite clicking, or they're like, or it's feast and famine, and it's like, oh, two steps forward, one step back. Does that come back to like self-worth, self-belief, like believing that you are worthy of receiving, or there's a little bit of work to do there with, and this was okay, so this is something I only just came up with the other day that that I'm springing on you right now, and I'd love to get your take on this. Is, we all have our own wounds, right? We all have our own traumas, things we've either inherited or we've come to believe about ourselves because of circumstance or what have you. I think there has just been, especially in like the spiritual realm, there has been so much focus on healing, that we're supposed to be on this healing journey, that we, in order for us to become enlightened or our highest selves, we've got to heal this trauma, that trauma, blah, 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 blah. And I feel like I have spent like the best part of, I don't know, 15 years or more trying to fix myself
yeah.
because I've
Mm,
got a trauma or I've got a block or I've got an issue. And so therefore I'm broken. So I need to heal that in order to then evolve or receive what I want to receive. And the concept I've been sitting with just recently, just literally like at the end of last week, that I've only floated it past a couple of girlfriends so far, is that what if these are just like little badges we wear, right?
yeah.
I've got one badge that says I'm really loving, another one that says I'm a bit silly, another one that says I'm a really great friend. And then I've got another one that says, I'm insecure
Mm,
and I can get really sad sometimes. And I'm a deep thinker and a big feeler. And like, what if they're all just little badges that make up, our cute little human armor that we wear in this lifetime? And instead of focusing so much on fixing or healing those so-called bad things that we perceive to be negatives, what if the real work, aka the healing, is actually learning to love ourselves with that badge on our
oh,
chest? What if like, oh yeah, I am Sonia, and yeah, I can get insecure sometimes and I can get really sad sometimes and I can be really hard on myself sometimes, and I can be really funny, I can be really thoughtful, I can be so loving. What if all of those things, like we're just meant to learn how to love ourselves with all of those things and move through our lives with them rather than trying to fix the bad stuff, and we just fall down this rabbit hole of constant healing. It's like, oh, I've got to heal this, then I got to heal that, and like we're just spending our whole lives trying to fix ourselves rather than living our lives and seeing the beauty in it and enjoying ourselves, you know?
yeah. Oh, do you know what? I resonate with everything that you've highlighted. I think it's such an amazing topic, and I would absolutely for you to keep exploring that, pull threads on that, have conversations around that. So I'm going to take it back to astrology, and then I'm going to give you some context to what I see with people and how I am maybe am interpreting what you're sharing with me. So all of us, when we come into this world, we're given a natal chart. It's our soul's blueprint. I call it our map of potential. It's who we are, it's who we've come here to be, right? And it's what makes us us. Now, that never changes, right? But nothing is ever static, everything is always in motion. And so I always use the analogy of like it's a default computer, like it's a computer with like a default setting, your natal chart. So when you buy a new device or a computer, it's stock standard, but you'll buy a bunch of fancy apps to upgrade it, maybe personalize the home screen, use it in a way that works with you from probably a productivity standpoint. But our natal charts are no different. The relationships we have, the decisions we make, the places we choose to live, the way we've been raised, right? That's all going to shape who we become. So over time, we get to upgrade its frequency, right? Like nothing is ever set in stone astrologically. And so, like, if you, for instance, say, like, I think one of the badges you referenced was you can be a little insecure sometimes and also sad, right? Well, there is probably some explanation, I would imagine, through the lens of your stars, right? But because we're meaning making machines as human beings, we want to wear that badge because it helps us to understand who we are. So it's about taking extreme ownership over who we are and who we have come here to be, but knowing that, so again, that's that integration you're speaking to. Like, I don't want us to all be high vibe all the time and lean into toxic positivity, because that's not how life like is meant to be lived, right? We're meant to have challenge. We're meant to be faced with adversity, and we're meant to be able to do things or be faced with things in order to grow, right? Because without that, we will never evolve. But in saying that, it's like if we're hiding parts of who we innately are, right? And this is what tends to happen astrologically with our stars. We'll have certain planets and certain positionings that are more dominant than others. And then depending on our circumstances, they will shine brighter than others. So, for an example of this, is that when I was younger and then when I was moving into my teenage years, like I'm a Virgo sun and I have three key planets in Virgo, but I have a ton of fire in my natal chart. So I grew up with that fire running the show. And of sometimes it got me into trouble. There was definitely some things in life that I regret or had to go through because of being very spontaneous and a little rebellious. But what I found is when then I moved into being a business owner, I let all of my Virgo aspects run the show, which I actually don't think is healthy either, because I lost parts of who I am. And so now moving into this new era, and it's something that I've been exploring over the last couple of years, and I say this regularly because of what I've had to go through, is you cannot like compartmentalize these parts of yourself. You have to figure out how they can coexist together so that I can wear glitter, like, because my Leo rising loves that, and like have a good sequin from time to time, and like be loud and be center of attention in some instances. And at other times, I can be really diligent and work behind the scenes and prefer to observe rather than participate. And that's actually totally okay. But it's knowing like one shouldn't coexist, like one shouldn't be able to exist without the other. How do you allow them to coexist together?
Yeah, I think you absolutely nailed it. There was a word you said that really sort of sparked my ear, and that was integration. And I think integration and acceptance go hand in hand.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
when we can accept, and there's that, like, if you're into EFT tapping, there's always that part where it says, and I love, honor, and accept myself, or I love, accept, and forgive myself, whichever version you like to use, but there's always accept in it.
Yeah.
And I think that when we can accept that, that is that integration piece. And then we are living more fully. We are
Mm.
being our true selves, which I think
Yeah.
is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. I don't think we have to fix who we are, right? Because I think as soon as you go into that headspace, you're essentially admitting you think something's wrong with you. I do believe, looping back to your initial question around those times where I found it more difficult to manifest, was because I didn't believe I was worthy. But then also on the flip side of that is that I was also resistant to the change that was unfolding. And I think too, it comes back to this, previous conversation we are having about change, right? And if I think back to, a big period of my life that, was really monumentally shaping in regards to who I've become now, it was absolute shit. And I was also resistant to the change. I made it so much harder than I needed it to be. But then in hindsight, I look back now and I learned so many wonderful lessons, but I sat probably in my shit for way too long. And, that's unfortunately and fortunately the human experience.
Can relate, have done many times. You're like, nope, I'm just going to make this so much harder than it needs to be.
Yep.
But then, yeah, I mean, there are times where that has served me beautifully, because I feel like sometimes the universe really has to pump the brakes on me, because I just, like Aries sun, Aries moon, want to keep like forging ahead, and Virgo is diligent and she never stops. And it is all of that. And sometimes we do need like circumstances to pump the brakes on us and just be like, okay, no, actually, I've got to slow. And like pumping the brakes, I don't mean like we stop and we stagnate, but like we go slower than we want to, because we have to actually be going at a pace where we notice the scenery,
Yeah.
where we're noticing what's going on around us and within us, so that we can make those little tweaks and changes, and get ourselves not necessarily back on track, but, and this is another word I think we need to reclaim back to its truest sense, is alignment,
Oh,
because
yeah.
that word's been butchered and commercialized as well. And I just think there's absolutely nothing wrong with Okay, I see where I kind of went a bit off kilter there. I went a little bit too far in that direction, as I like to say, swung the pendulum too far in that direction. Then I'll probably swing it all the way back to the other, and then it'll settle and find its way to the middle. And like, we all have our processes, and I think personally, when we say we're tired, I think there's an undercurrent of truth underneath that is saying, I'm really tired of making myself wrong.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think like if I think about feeling tired and being tired and conversations I have with people, especially when they're in more like a holding pattern, things aren't moving the way they want them to, is I always, and maybe that's the Virgo in me, I always look to, well, what are they trying to achieve? Or what am I trying to manifest right now? Or what am I like trying to force and hang on to because I want that to innately happen for whatever reason? And a lot of the time, you're actually not in the right condition. Maybe right's not even the right word, but you're not even in the right space to even welcome that energy in. So I remember a conversation I had with a client a few years ago, and she was really angling towards wanting to have $1 million business. And that was right in the trenches of business coaching. And everyone was touting their $10,000 months, which to me has never been a driver. And I think it's actually, for me personally, I know everyone doesn't feel like this. It's just like a conversation that kind of is tiring for me. I'm not, excited about that. I also, though, the same breath, I think as women, especially, we need to accumulate abundance, but abundance comes in so many different ways. And also feeling fulfilled and happy, I think for me as I get older is way more important than the amount of money in my bank account. But, I said to her, like, she can't even respond to an email. And I'm like, well, if you want this like $1 million business, right? Like, are you even prepared? Like, if that came into your arena tomorrow, would you have the sustenance to hold that or the foundation to hold that? And that I think was a light bulb moment for her. And she put some aspects in place, but I use that as an anecdote because I know for me personally, in those times where I've manifested more easily, or things have felt vibrant and full of vitality rather than tiring and forcing and depleting, is because I've been in the arena ready for it and ready to hold it as well. But I notice with myself personally, it doesn't mean I can sustain it all the time. And that's a conversation I want to start having more often over the next couple of years with the astrology, is like, rather than searching for our purpose, actually looking at more, well, what's going to sustain me for this time in my life? Because I think that pressure of performance and purpose and am I living in alignment, right, with where I want to go may not be the right timing for everything that you desire to come into your arena right now. So how can you sustain the vision while also knowing like there's still things that are on their way to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like instead of the word right, because you were like, oh, I don't think right
Mhm.
is the right word.
Yeah.
I think the right word is ready. You're
Mm,
ready to receive it and you're ready to hold it and you're ready to carry it
yeah.
because it's all of those things. It's not just the receiving, it's the holding and the carrying it and moving forward with it. And I think, yeah, that's a really, really powerful piece. And also just what you said as well. I've been seeing little messages popping into my awareness a lot recently, and I pay close attention because I feel like that's the way the universe communicates with me, is either through, oh, I just come across this random podcast episode, or this email drops in and there's a sentence in it that just like hits me like a lightning bolt. And a lot of it has been to do with purpose. And the message I keep getting is like, your job is not your purpose necessarily. Like, it might be your calling, like, that's your calling, and that's what you're meant to do because you're amazing at it and you can have an impact and you can help people and all those really cool things. And also, like, it's not your purpose. Your
Mm,
purpose is to be you, it's to be that wife or that friend or that mother or that person in who touches people's lives just by moving through the world in the way that only you can move through the world. And I think the more we can tune into that message, which again just comes back to like self-trust and self-agency and like, self-love as well, is
mm,
like, yeah, like, it comes back to that cliche is like, if I were to pass away and everyone was talking about me at my funeral, I don't think they're going to say, oh, wow, she was like, she had this job and then she did that. Oh my God, she worked in retail for 6 months when she was 41. Like, what a loser. No, they're not going to be saying that. They're going to be like, she was sometimes very like funny and silly, and she could be the life of the party, and she could cut up a rug on the dance floor, and also she could hold me when I was crying and like hold really deep conversations and not waver and not be afraid of anything I was going through and was always there. That's what people are going to say about us. And I feel like that's our purpose, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Mm.
purpose is like one of the top three conversations I have. It's always relationships, career, and purpose, right? Most people want to know if they're living in alignment with what they believe is true for them. And, you're speaking my language. And this is why I wanted to kind of hone in on this point and then also echo what you're saying. We have a North Node in our natal chart, and that speaks to our purpose. It's our destiny, it's our North Star. We have our South Node, which is our past life influence, or think of it as your comfort zone. And so that's not necessarily where I look only when I'm talking to someone about their purpose, but I also always highlight to someone your purpose isn't always your vocation. We've just been so conditioned to think that our identity is based on what we do. And I remember so clearly a beautiful conversation that I had with a wonderful woman once. And when we actually explored like her purpose is her role as a mum in this lifetime. And as soon as I was able to reflect that back to her, it was like you watched her shoulders drop. She took this beautiful big sigh and she was like, amazing, pressure off. And I think that reframing what we're here to do is so key in us. But again, that's definitely something that's ingrained in us. And hopefully that will start to shift over the next decade.
Yeah, I hope so too, because like, yeah, just that shift in perspective.
Yeah.
I think it was Gabby Bernstein who said it, but I should really do my research and go back and find it. But I remember reading a miracle is a shift in perspective, and I
Mm.
I felt an exhale. I felt my shoulders drop. I felt a weight lift when I read that, because I was like, yeah, like sometimes all we're looking for, and I mean, really, this is what manifestation comes back to, is it's not necessarily always about the thing, it's about the way the thing is going to make us feel. And then if we can sort of shift our perspective ever so slightly in the now moment without even having that thing, like that's a win right there.
Mm.
Is,
Mm.
oh, I can see that from a different perspective. I can feel, even though things are really, really hard right now, and I don't know how or when they're going to shift or change, I can still find little glimmers of joy in my day. I can still find hope. I can still find trust and faith and belief, and yeah, and just beauty and all the good things in life as well. And yeah, I think that's probably, I really hope that that's where the collective conversation, really sort of shifts towards, because it has, like, this past decade, especially if you've been on Instagram, if you've had a business, if you've been online in any way, shape, or form, you've just felt this pressure to just constantly show up and perform and create and be out there and da 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 and doing all the things. It's felt like an absolute hamster wheel. And I think that for me, especially this year, has been a really huge year about me untangling my identity
Yep.
from my career,
Yeah.
because I have chosen not to be a mother in this lifetime in the traditional sense. And so for me, my career has always been really important and such a huge part of my identity, and like really untangling myself from that this year has been a huge piece of work. And of course it's taken longer than I've wanted it to, but that's because I'm going at the pace that I'm able to go at, and I'm willing to go at. And yeah, really sort of coming home to myself in that it's like my husband couldn't care less what I do for work. He
Yeah.
loves me for me. My friends don't care what my job title is. They love me for me, and my purpose is to be me and to be the light in any way that I can,
Yeah.
especially in a world with all the stuff that's going on right now.
Yeah. And I think that's even for me, it's been such a joy to watch you explore that, because I think that one of the things that I've noticed from each time we connect and then everything that you're creating in between is that you're creating some amazing things for women, and maybe some beautiful men out there too. But it's become what I see in your work. It's very thought-provoking, and there's like you can tell that you're speaking from a very heart-centered place, and that does feel and filter through to me as very raw and authentic, but equally empowering. And I think that's such a beautiful place to play. And maybe you couldn't have spoken through that dimension if you hadn't of faced the adversity that you had this year.
Yeah, I really do believe that for sure. And so I would love to know, I've noticed you make a few little shifts and changes this year, and I feel like the vibe that I've gotten, and also, obviously from what you've shared publicly, is that, you have made some tweaks and changes to really kind of honor yourself a lot more. And I heard you on another podcast, and you were speaking to the way you run your business is like you really just prefer doing one-on-one sessions. That's your jam. That's where you really come alive, and you don't really have that desire to create curriculums and teach big, huge groups and da 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 and do all those big things. And also, I've just noticed you, sort of take a step back from Instagram, and, and then also I've felt a shift in what you're sharing as well. Like there's a little bit more sass, there's a little bit more attitude, there's a little bit more fire. And I love it. I love it because, there's so much out there in if you want to call all that other stuff like pop astrology, where it's like really sort of commercialized to make, impact and cut through and go viral and all the things. And I would just love to know, like, if you were going to share one little thing about how you have come to really trust yourself more to be like, no, this is the way I run my business and it works for me. And this is the way I'm going to use Instagram without it consuming me. And then this is what I'm going to share and how I'm going to express myself. You know, if there was just one little golden nugget you could give us from all of those little shifts and changes you've chosen to make this year, what would it be?
It's a question, and it's a question that I curated because when I worked in corporate, so my background's actually in learning and development. And so before I went to Sephora, I worked with Estee Lauder companies for almost a decade. And I have to say their education and support was amazing. And we were always exposed to incredible opportunities to develop ourselves as leaders. But I always remember reading a book by Edward de Bono called The Six Thinking Hats. And one of the things I always challenge myself is to wear the black hat, right? How do I see something through a completely different lens? Because I'm biased, I'm an optimistic person, I'm a glass half full. And this changed everything for me. And it was asking the question, which is, what would it look like if I stopped teaching astrology and started using astrology to teach the world about itself? And it allows me to view things through a different lens. And so for me to be able to do that, right, that's a broader mission, that's a global mission. I always said when I started my business, I want to make astrology accessible and disrupt the industry and stop putting it in a box of fortune telling. So to do that, I have to do it differently. But I had prescribed to those narratives for so long, I think I'd forgotten how to do that. And so there's been a real reclamation and voice through that. And so I'm like, well, if I want to be the one leading this broader mission, right, I can't spend hours on Instagram consuming other people's content. I can't continue to look towards what everybody else is doing online. And I've never been one to really follow any astrologers unless they're my friends or, consume other people's contents. But I think this is the first year, like I've been forecasting the next few years, that I've actually gone back to my roots. And I did a lot of analysis on some of the consumer trends, how we're going to be feeling emotionally over the next few years. What are our purchasing patterns going to be like? What are some of the things that they're predicting with the rise of technology? That's all the stuff I used to do in corporate. But because I'd been in my astrology bubble for so long, I had just, been doing things the same way. So now I'm starting to look at how can I find a new edge within this. And I love that you picked up that you're noticing I'm a little sassier because that's who I am. But I diluted myself for so long because I was trying to appeal to everyone. I was trying to people please. Let's blame Venus on my sun, but I wanted to make everyone so happy. And I had a couple of like run-ins with clients over particular things, which I think were really unnecessary. And I actually had a friend say to me, who she is amazing, she's a numerologist, and we were just catching up one day, and she was like, Kristy, the world, like your like Instagram, it's like this community, right? And you've got community that cares about you, but there's a lot of people there that they have no idea what you do on a day-to-day basis. They don't know how you hold space for your clients. Like, what are you so worried about? And I think, that's probably a really long answer to your question, but it all started with that question for me, which has actually helped me shape everything, how I write, how I connect with people. And I just feel like I'm just getting started and I'm celebrating 7 years in business in like 4 days. And I'm just like, oh, this is where I'm meant to play. And I wish I'd done it sooner.
Oh, I love that so much. That's so powerful. And as you were speaking about what your personal philosophy on astrology is and like how you want to move with it in your career is it just reminds me of what I'm so passionate about and what I've tried to deny for so long is that, I've worn the hats of social media coach and business coach, but ultimately I live in the realm of personal development, but not in the sense that you need to change who you are to become who you want to be. My hot take on personal development is in order for you to become who you truly want to be, you need to know yourself. You
Yeah,
need to know yourself so deeply and so well. And then as a result of that, there's an awareness, there's an acceptance, there's an integration, and then there's a becoming. So for me, and I remember like it was in our first session that crystallized, and I've been sitting with that ever since. And that was back in, I think we had our first session back in April, and I've just been letting that unfold ever since. And that's what has given me the ability to spread my wings and bring Project Radiance back in its form that it came back in this year and to run Uncovered, which I am getting the most incredible feedback from the women who did that 3 week privately guided journaling experience with me. And I'm now crafting their personalized letters based on their responses. And it's just like, they are just like, oh my God, like this is unreal. And, and I know there are other things coming. Maybe there's another piece of work that is going to fit into my body of work. And, that's cool as well. But it's really like, saying, okay, well, if this is my wheelhouse, if this is what I'm really passionate about, what's the flavor I want to bring to this? Like, how could I do this differently? Like, if I was going to have an impact on the world and actually help people with this, like, rather than, like what you said, teaching them astrology, what can you teach the world about itself? And I feel like for me, like that is very much what I'm doing in personal development is just like holding up the mirror to these women, but like I've cleaned the glass for them, and it's
yeah,
framed in gold and the lighting is really good so that when so that
love.
when they look in this mirror, they're seeing their brilliance and their beauty rather than everything they think is wrong with themselves and what's broken. And I feel like, I could literally start a girl gang with women like you and some of my friends who are doing incredible things through their businesses as well, because I feel like the 7 and 8 year old versions of us would be really proud because we're creating the spaces and the experiences and the services that we've always wished we could have. You know?
100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
100%. And you have to honor, like I know that you and I had this conversation a while ago, um, but everybody's going to tell you that their way is the right way. But I like laugh because I remember the conversation we had was we were talking about how to attract your dream clients, based on your moon sign. And, I always think it's so funny, like everyone's going to sell you their blueprint, but that doesn't mean that that's your blueprint. And I think that that comes back to this word of authenticity, right? Is I had somebody approach me over the last few days who wants me to, run a retreat and an event with them. And I just was like, that's just not where I'm at right now. I'm writing, I'm enjoying that, I'm working on the book. And I think you have to honor those times. And, sometimes we don't want to let people down, or it might sound really sparkly and shiny, and there's some great opportunities. But at the end of the day, if your heart's not in it, people will be able to tell.
Yeah, absolutely. And also I think you got to trust the season you're in,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Is even if you don't like it, you're there for a reason, and when you're ready to change seasons, you will. And so as a result of that, I think you're right. It's like, if there would be certain opportunities that would come my way right now, and I just know
Yeah.
I would not be able to deliver. Like I wouldn't be able to give my full brilliant self to it, not because I'm not capable,
Yeah.
but because it's just not right now. It's
Yeah.
not for me right now. And I think that's really important to acknowledge as well, as like, yeah, we can do amazing things. And also we can trust that, there's always the right time for things. I know some people would like to debate that, there's no such thing as the right time, you've just got to do it. And yeah, maybe that's the case for some things, but for other things, I think you really know within yourself when it's not the right time or you're not in the right season, and you've just got to
Yeah.
honor that and move with that. And so, my last question for you before we wrap up this incredible conversation, which could go on for another 3 hours with us two Virgo suns hanging out, is the series is called the Creatress tapes because creatress is a word I really resonate with, and I feel like every woman has a creatress within her because we as women are inherently born to create, whether that is life, families, communities, businesses, whatever the case may be. If you could share one message with the women listening about tapping into their inner creatress and really giving her permission to shine, what would you want to say to them?
That's such a big question. Okay, let me sit with this for a moment. Can you repeat the question? So, if I was to share
Yep.
anything,
Yep. So
yep,
if you were to say to the women listening right now, giving them a permission slip or a mantra or a phrase that is going to really help them tune into their inner creatress and let her really come out and shine. And this could be in any way, shape, or form. What would you want to say to them?
yeah, find space, create space to tune in and listen. I have blazed a trail throughout my life, and it wasn't until I reached 40 and 41 that I actually stopped to reflect and tune in. And that has been the greatest gift I've been able to give myself because I think it's so easy to try to think our way through things and to try to find logic and reason and maybe even speak with GPT, right, about all of our problems. But if we can create just a little bit of space, right? And for everyone, that will be different. Some people will find that space in meditation. Some people will find that within a little bit of breath work. Some people, it might be journaling, right? Some people, it could be a walk in nature. There's not one right way to do space or create it, but find that little bit of space for you. And over time, expand that time you spend with yourself. It can be a few minutes every day if you want to. And what that allows you to do is look inwards, not to find an answer, but to have a conversation with yourself. And when you start to do that, that is how you cultivate self trust. So that when you are in a state of overwhelm or stress or change or transformation, is that sure, life can feel a little wobbly. But if that's something that you can come home to, which is yourself, that is where the ultimate source, I truly believe, in that space will allow you to create.
That is phenomenal. I love that so much. And yeah, I just had home. Home is you. Home is where you are. So like, come home to yourself. Yeah, that's another turn of phrase. I think we're going to be doing a lot of reclamation this next year of language and phrases and just bringing it back to the truth and the heart of what it all really means, right?
Yeah, so I've already started forecasting for next year, and I won't share exactly what I've landed on, but you actually mentioned it earlier in the conversation, which I just love because it's exactly what we need. So this year was the personal revolution. It was about really like creating the change that we need to step forward. Next year, the cornerstone of what will be required is integration. And so you need the space to integrate.
Absolutely. I think that's a beautiful note to end this chat on. Thank you so much, my love.
Thank you, my love.